Welcome back as we take you to a very deep and amazing journey of relaxation of bedtime story. Please like and subscribe to the channel so we can get your request on a story you want to listen to. Before we start, make sure you are very comfortable and in a very warm spot. Take a deep breath and make sure to focus your mind entirely on your breathing, forgetting about your worries in this short while as you get the best treatment you can give your brain. Okay, let's begin. The night air of Dragonstone carried the scent of salt and stone as Rhaenyra Targaryen stood upon the ancient balcony of the Sea Dragon Tower. Moonlight spilled across the dark waters of Blackwater Bay, creating a silver pathway that seemed to stretch toward the distant shores of King's Landing. Her silver-gold hair caught the gentle breeze as she gazed upward at the night sky where her dragon, Syrax, circled overhead, scales glimmering like burnished gold in the starlight. The castle behind her stood silent save for the occasional distant footsteps of guards making their rounds along the stone corridors. Tonight was special, the eve of the Dance of Dragons celebration, when the realm would commemorate the peace that followed generations of conflict. Rhaenyra's thoughts drifted to the stories her father had told her of their ancestors, of Aegon the Conqueror who had forged the Seven Kingdoms with fire and blood, of Jaehaerys the Wise whose long reign had brought prosperity to the realm. She pulled her velvet cloak tighter against the chill, its deep crimson fabric embroidered with the three-headed dragon of House Targaryen. Below, waves crashed against the obsidian cliffs, their rhythm as constant as the Targaryen legacy that flowed through her veins. The moonlight caught the facets of the dragon glass embedded in the castle walls, creating a constellation of stars that mirrored those above. A soft sound drew her attention, the whisper of fabric against stone. "You should be resting, princess," came the gentle voice of Ser Lord Velaryon, her intended. His silver-white hair, a mark of the Valyrian bloodline they shared, seemed almost luminous in the darkness. "The celebration begins at first light." Rhaenyra smiled, turning to face him. "How can one sleep when dragons dance in the sky?" she asked, gesturing toward where Syrax had been joined by Laenor's own mount, Seasmoke. The two dragons soared in graceful arcs, their occasional calls echoing across the water. "Besides," she continued, "I've been visited by strange dreams of late, visions of our house in times yet to come." Laenor stepped closer, his expression curious. "What manner of visions?" The princess hesitated, uncertain how to describe the fragments that had haunted her sleep. Images of a silver-haired woman walking from flames unburnt, of dragons thought extinct returning to the skies, of winter coming to claim even the fiercest fires. "I've seen a descendant," she finally said, "a daughter of our house born amidst salt and smoke. Daenerys, they call her in my dreams. She walks through fire and emerges with dragons when all others believe them gone from the world." The sea breeze strengthened, bringing with it the distant scent of dragon, smoke and heat and something indefinably magical. "The maesters would say it's merely the fancy of an overactive mind," Laenor offered, though his tone suggested he wasn't entirely convinced. Rhaenyra shook her head. Targaryens have always had a connection to dreams that others do not understand. My father spoke of prophetic dreams before his passing, visions that guided his decisions for the realm. She turned back toward the sea, where the first hints of dawn were beginning to lighten the eastern horizon. Sometimes I wonder if our dragons share these visions. They seem to know things beyond our understanding. As if in response to her words, Syrax descended toward the balcony, hovering close enough that Rhaenyra could feel the heat radiating from her golden scales. The dragon's eyes, molten pools of amber, met hers with an intelligence that transcended the boundary between beast and rider. A wordless communication passed between them, an understanding deeper than language. "She wants to fly," Rhaenyra said, a smile spreading across her face. "Before the castle wakes and the celebrations begin." Laenor looked uncertain. "Is that wise? The guests will be arriving soon, and your presence will be expected." Rhaenyra was already climbing onto the balcony's edge. "We'll return before anyone notices my absence." "Sea Smoke seems eager as well," she noted, nodding toward where the silver-gray dragon circled impatiently. "Unless you've grown too cautious in your advancing years." The teasing challenge had its intended effect. Laenor laughed, the sound carrying across the pre-dawn stillness. "I'll race you to the Dragonmont and back," he countered, already moving toward the wider terrace where Sea Smoke could land. Moments later, they were airborne, 2 dragons and their riders soaring above the sleeping castle. The wind rushed past Rhaenyra's face as Syrax climbed higher, the warmth of the dragon beneath her a sharp contrast to the cool air. Below, Dragonstone transformed from an imposing fortress to a child's toy, its towers and battlements miniaturized by distance. They flew toward the Dragonmont, the ancient volcano that had drawn their Valyrian ancestors to this island centuries ago. Steam rose from its peak, a reminder of the fire that still lived within the mountain's heart. Rhaenyra leaned forward, whispering encouragement to Syrax as they overtook Laenor and Sea Smoke, the exhilaration of flight washing away the lingering unease from her dreams. The first golden rays of sunrise broke across the horizon as they circled the mountain's peak, illuminating the landscape in warm light that set the dragon's scales ablaze with color. In that moment, suspended between night and day, between dream and waking, Rhaenyra felt the full power of her heritage, the blood of old Valyria, the connection to these magnificent creatures that had shaped the destiny of her family and the realm. As they descended toward Dragonstone, the morning light revealed ships approaching from the mainland, vessels bearing the banners of noble houses coming to pay homage at the celebration. Rhaenyra guided Syrax toward the Dragon Pit, a massive structure built into the side of the castle specifically for housing the family's mounts. The great doors stood open in anticipation of the day's festivities, and several handlers waited within, ready to attend to the dragon's needs. Laenor and Sea Smoke landed shortly after, the silver dragon's wings creating gusts that sent nearby tapestries fluttering against the stone walls. "A fine morning flight," Laenor said as he dismounted. His face flushed with excitement. "Though I believe sea smoke would have overtaken you had we continued to the spears of Meraxes." Rhaenyra laughed, patting Syrax's warm neck before stepping away to allow the handlers to approach with food for the dragons. "Perhaps we'll test that claim another day," she replied. "For now, we should prepare for the celebration." They made their way through the castle corridors, which were now coming alive with activity. Servants hurried past carrying fresh linens and trays of food, while decorators hung the final Targaryen banners in the Great Hall. The smell of freshly baked bread and roasting meats wafted from the kitchens, promising a feast worthy of the occasion. In her chambers, Rhaenyra found her ladies-in-waiting already preparing her ceremonial attire, a gown of black silk embroidered with crimson thread that formed intricate dragon patterns across the bodice and sleeves. As they helped her dress, one of the younger girls, Alysanne, spoke excitedly about the rumors surrounding the celebration. "They say Lord Velaryon has brought a dragon egg as a gift, Your Highness," she whispered, her eyes wide. "One that glows with an inner light even in the darkest room." Rhaenyra raised an eyebrow, intrigued despite her skepticism. Dragon eggs were precious beyond measure, particularly since fewer dragons hatched with each passing generation. "And where did you hear such tales?" she asked as another attendant arranged her hair in the elaborate style befitting a princess of the realm. "From one of the kitchen boys who helped unload Lord Velaryon's ships," Alysanne replied. "He said it was kept in a chest of Valyrian steel, guarded by 6 men at all times." Before Rhaenyra could question her further, a knock at the door announced the arrival of Maester Gerardis, the elderly scholar who had served Dragonstone for decades. He bowed as he entered, his chain of many metals clinking softly with the movement. "Princess, I bring news from King's Landing," he said, producing a sealed parchment bearing the royal sigil. "A raven arrived during your morning flight." Rhaenyra took the message, breaking the wax seal with a flick of her thumb. As she read, her expression grew serious, the excitement of the morning giving way to concern. "The king writes that unrest grows in the capital," she said, looking up at the maester. "Certain factions question the succession plans. He advises caution during today's celebrations, as representatives from these houses will be present." Gerardis nodded gravely. "I feared as much. The question of who will sit the Iron Throne after your father has caused much speculation throughout the realm." Rhaenyra handed the parchment back to him. "Burn this," she instructed, "and send word to Captain Carl to double the guards at the harbor and castle gates. We'll welcome our guests with all courtesy, but I'll not be caught unprepared should anyone harbor ill intentions." The maester bowed again and departed, leaving Rhaenyra to finish her preparations with a heavier heart than when she'd begun. By midday, The great hall of Dragonstone was filled with nobility from across the 7 kingdoms. Lords and ladies in their finest attire mingled beneath the vaulted ceiling, where stone dragons seemed to watch the proceedings with ancient, knowing eyes. Musicians played in one corner, their melodies nearly drowned by the buzz of conversation. Rhaenyra sat upon the seat of honor, carved from dragon glass and adorned with rubies that caught the light from the enormous hearth fires. She smiled and nodded as each noble house presented their gifts and respects, but her mind remained alert, watching for any signs of the discord her father had warned about. Lord Velaryon approached with his gift, and indeed, it was a chest of Valyrian steel carried by 4 strong men. The sea snake, as he was known throughout the realm, bowed deeply before her. Princess Rhaenyra, House Velaryon offers this token of our continued loyalty to House Targaryen and to you, the rightful heir to the Iron Throne, he proclaimed, his voice carrying throughout the hall. A hush fell over the assembled guests as the chest was placed before her and opened with ceremonial slowness. Inside, nestled on black velvet, lay not 1 but 3 dragon eggs, 1 deep green with bronze flecks, 1 cream with gold swirls, and 1 black as midnight with scarlet ripples across its surface. Rhaenyra's breath caught in her throat. Even from where she sat, she could sense the warmth emanating from the eggs, though all knew that dragon eggs turned to stone over time without the right conditions to hatch. These eggs were recovered from the shadow lands beyond As High, Lord Corlys explained. Brought back during my last voyage aboard the sea snake. Legend claims they date back to the height of Valyria before the Doom, preserved by ancient magic and the wisdom of the Shadowbinders. Rhaenyra rose from her seat and approached the chest, drawn by an inexplicable connection to the black egg in particular. As her fingers hovered above its surface, she could have sworn she felt movement within, a stirring of life where none should exist. The sensation sent a shiver down her spine, reminiscent of her dreams of the silver-haired Daenerys and her dragons. House Targaryen accepts this magnificent gift with profound gratitude, she said, her voice steady despite the tumult of emotions within. May it symbolize the enduring bond between our houses and the promise of dragons yet to come. As she spoke these words, a strange wind seemed to sweep through the hall, causing the flames in the hearth to surge momentarily higher. Several guests gasped, and Rhaenyra herself felt a prescient shiver, as though the future she had glimpsed in her dreams had somehow reached back to touch this moment. The celebration continued long into the night, with feasting and dancing and tales of dragon riders past. Yet throughout it all, Rhaenyra's thoughts kept returning to the eggs now secured in her private chambers, and to the visions that had visited her sleep. As midnight approached, she slipped away from the festivities, drawn back to the quiet solitude of the Sea Dragon Tower where her night had begun. There, by the light of a single candle, she sat beside the Valyrian steel chest and placed her hand upon the black egg. Its surface was warm to the touch, like sun-heated stone, and beneath her palm, she felt again that impossible flutter of life. "What secrets do you hold?" she whispered to the egg. "What futures have you seen across the centuries?" The candle flame seemed to dance in response, casting moving shadows across the walls that took the shape of dragons in flight. And as Rhaenyra closed her eyes, new visions came to her, clearer than before. She saw the silver-haired Daenerys standing before a funeral pyre, walking into flames with these very eggs. She saw them crack open to reveal tiny dragons that would grow to shadow the land with their wings. She saw winter come and go, and fire rise again. When she opened her eyes, the candle had burned low, but the egg beneath her hand glowed with an inner heat that had not been there before. And somewhere in the distance, Syrax called out into the night, a sound echoed by every dragon on Dragonstone, as though they too had glimpsed the future that awaited their kind. Rhaenyra smiled in the darkness, suddenly certain that the legacy of House Targaryen and their dragons would endure through fire and blood, far beyond her own time. The wheel of fate had begun to turn, connecting her to generations yet unborn, to a destiny that transcended the immediate concerns of succession and celebration. In that moment, princess though she was, Rhaenyra felt herself a small part of something far greater, a song of ice and fire that would continue long after her own voice had fallen silent. The following week passed in a flurry of covert preparations. Rhaenyra maintained her public duties, holding court, meeting with bannermen, sending ravens to her father in King's Landing, all while orchestrating the egg's secret departure from Dragonstone. Mysaria had secured a merchant vessel, the Seafoam, whose captain owed her a debt that could never be repaid with mere gold. The ship would sail under the guise of carrying mundane cargo to Braavos, the eggs hidden within a false compartment beneath barrels of arbor wine. On the night before their departure, Rhaenyra sequestered herself in the highest chamber of the Sea Dragon Tower with only the eggs for company. She had dismissed her guards and servants, claiming a need for solitary prayer before the small sept she had established in her rooms, a convenient fiction to mask her true purpose. The chamber was lit only by 7 candles representing the aspects of the 7, though Rhaenyra placed no true faith in either the new gods of the Undulls or the old gods of the First Men. Tonight, she would call upon older powers, the magic of Valyria that ran in her veins alongside the blood of the dragon. She arranged the eggs in their now familiar triangle upon a cloth of black silk embroidered with high Valyrian glyphs. From a small chest of carved weirwood, she removed items gathered at great risk and expense. A vial of her own blood drawn at the full moon, dragon scales shed by Syrax during her last molting, obsidian dust from the deepest caves beneath the Dragonmont, and a small silver bowl filled with seawater collected at the precise moment when tide turned from ebb to flow. Kneeling before this arrangement, Rhaenyra began to chant, her voice low but unwavering as she sprinkled the obsidian dust in a circle around the eggs. The candle flames grew taller, casting elongated shadows across the stone walls that seemed to move of their own accord, dancing to the rhythm of ancient words not spoken in centuries. She dripped the vial of blood into the silver bowl, where it spiraled through the seawater before settling into patterns reminiscent of the map of Westeros and Essos combined. The dragon scales she placed atop each egg, watching as they seemed to melt into the hardened surfaces, temporarily restoring the iridescent luster of living dragonhide. As the ritual reached its crescendo, Rhaenyra felt the tower around her fade from perception. She stood not in a chamber of stone but in a space between worlds, where time flowed differently and distant voices echoed with words of power and prophecy. A woman with silver hair identical to her own appeared before her, not Daenerys as she might have expected, but someone older, wiser, wearing robes adorned with symbols unfamiliar to Rhaenyra. "You have found the path," the woman said, her voice resonating as though speaking from across a great distance. "The circle must be maintained." "Who are you?" Rhaenyra asked, though part of her already knew the answer. "I am what remains of Daenys the Dreamer," the apparition replied. "My visions saved our family from the doom of Valyria. Now yours will preserve our legacy through the darkness to come." The spectral form of Daenys gestured toward the eggs. "These are keys to more than dragons, princess. They are vessels of memory, carriers of our collective knowledge. When they awaken, they will bring not just fire but understanding, the wisdom our house has accumulated across generations." Rhaenyra absorbed this revelation with growing wonder. "Then I am not merely ensuring dragons return to the world. I am preserving our family's most precious inheritance." "The dragon is more than just a beast," Daenys confirmed. "It is knowledge incarnate, magic given form." Without this understanding, the dragons that followed Valyrian became lesser creatures, bound by flesh alone rather than the deeper connection our ancestors cultivated. She approached the black egg, passing her translucent hand over its surface. "This one will carry the most complete memory, the heart of what we were and what we may become again. Guard it well, and ensure it reaches the one who walks through fire." Before Rhaenyra could ask more questions, the vision of Daenys began to fade. "Remember," her ancestress whispered as she dissipated like morning mist, "the dreams are true, but time is fluid. What you have seen may yet change if the wrong hands interfere with what must be." The chamber solidified around Rhaenyra once more, but the eggs had transformed. Though still stone to all outward appearances, they now pulsed with an inner light that followed the rhythm of her heartbeat. The protection spell was complete. The eggs would remain dormant until blood and fire called them to life in the presence of their destined rider. Dawn found Rhaenyra exhausted but resolute as she supervised the eggs' careful packing into an unmarked chest. Ser Laenor arrived as planned, accompanied by 2 trusted Velaryon guards whose families had served his house for generations. "The sea foam sails with the morning tide," he informed her. "Captain Lysaro will personally oversee the cargo's placement." Rhaenyra nodded, then impulsively pressed something into Laenor's hand, a small dragon figurine carved from weirwood, its eyes tiny chips of dragonglass. "This must travel with them," she said. It contains a fragment of the spell, ensuring the connection remains strong across time. Laenor looked as though he might question this, but something in her expression stopped him. He merely nodded, securing the figurine in an inner pocket of his cloak. "I will see it done, Princess." As the chest was carried away, Rhaenyra felt a curious mixture of loss and relief. For days, the eggs had been her constant companions, their presence a tangible connection to the visions that had reshaped her understanding of her family's destiny. Now they would begin their long journey toward an uncertain future, guided by magic and blood and the intricate web of guardians she had helped establish. She turned her attention to the more immediate concerns awaiting her. Ravens had arrived overnight bearing troubling news from King's Landing. Her father's counsel was fracturing along lines of support for her claim versus that of her half-brother Aegon. Civil war loomed ever closer on the horizon, the dance of dragons preparing to begin its deadly choreography across the realm. That evening, as she stood once more upon the balcony where this strange journey had begun, Rhaenyra watched Syrax and the other dragons of Dragonstone circling against the sunset sky. Their silhouettes, black against crimson clouds, reminded her of the eggs now safely aboard the seafoam, sailing toward Braavos with the evening tide. A peculiar certainty settled in her heart. Whatever trials awaited her in the coming conflict, she had already secured a victory of sorts. House Targaryen might falter in the years ahead, might even appear defeated, but the legacy she had protected would ensure their eventual resurgence. Dragons would return to the world, and with them, the ancient knowledge of Valyria that had been fragmenting and fading with each passing generation. 2 days later, as Rhaenyra sat in council with her advisors discussing strategies for the impending conflict, Mysaria entered the chamber with uncharacteristic urgency. She approached the princess, bending to whisper in her ear. "The seafoam has successfully passed the gullet and entered the open sea. Your precious cargo is safely beyond the reach of your enemies in Westeros." Rhaenyra maintained her composure, giving only a slight nod before returning to the discussion of troop movements and potential alliances. Yet inwardly, she felt a burden lift from her shoulders. Whatever happened now in the struggle for the Iron Throne, she had accomplished something greater, something that transcended the petty squabbles of succession and power. Months passed, and war descended upon the Seven Kingdoms just as her visions had foretold. Dragons fought dragons in the skies above Westeros, their fire scorching fields and castles alike. Rhaenyra claimed the Iron Throne for a time, feeling the cold bite of its 1,000 blades against her skin as she sat upon the seat of Aegon the Conqueror. Yet even in her moments of triumph, she found her thoughts returning to the 3 eggs and their journey across time. On rare quiet nights, she would close her eyes and reach out with that strange sense that had awakened within her, feeling for the distant pulse of the eggs as they waited in their hiding place in Braavos. Sometimes she caught glimpses of their future path, traveling from the house with the red door to the Dothraki Sea, from the markets of Karth to the plazas of Astapor, always protected by those who had sworn to maintain the circle unbroken. And occasionally, in dreams that felt more real than her waking hours upon the Iron Throne, she would see Daenerys again, no longer a stranger from visions but a kindred spirit connected through the eggs and the burden of destiny they both carried. "We are alike, you and I," she whispered to this phantom from the future as dragons wheeled overhead in a sky split between night and day. "Queens in a world that fears our power. Dragon riders in an age that has forgotten what that truly means." The phantom Daenerys would smile sadly in these dreams, her violet eyes reflecting the same weight of expectation that Rhaenyra felt upon her own shoulders. "The wheel turns," she would reply, her voice carrying across centuries. "Fire and blood, winter and summer, death and rebirth." And Rhaenyra would wake from these encounters strengthened, more determined than ever to fight for her birthright, not merely for herself, but for the future queen who would one day hatch the eggs she had sent forward through time. For in protecting those eggs, Rhaenyra had ensured that regardless of the outcome of her own struggle, House Targaryen would endure. Dragons would fly again over Westeros, and the song of ice and fire would continue its eternal melody long after her own voice had fallen silent. This knowledge sustained her through betrayals and losses, through victories and defeats, through the dance that consumed her family and threatened to destroy everything they had built since Aegon's conquest. The wheel turned, the circle maintained its perfect form, and somewhere in the vastness of time, 3 dragon eggs waited patiently for the one who would wake them from stone with fire and blood.